Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How is everybody? I hope you all are having a blessed month. We are rolling into spring. We have sprung ahead as far as time goes. I want my hour back. I just want to thank everyone who has been tuning in, subscribed to the channel, downloaded the podcast. I am just so godly amazed at the support and just grateful that, my journey and my story is encouraging someone or someone's in this season. It is always a good thing to be able to help, at least for me. So I pray that whatever you're taking from this, you are applying it and it is helping you grow and heal in some way. If you, want to keep up with my videos, don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, What She Said. Or you can just check out my website, www.savedhealedenough.com, to keep up with all the goings on with me. So our last few videos, we definitely touched the surface because it was really only surface of quite a few things. We started out with making ourselves a priority. And then, we walked into some characteristics that develop from our traumas and, just really giving you information to start the conversation. Those were kind of like icebreakers. Those things we will definitely have to delve into a lot deeper because, again, there are layers to this. But, this is just the starter pack. This is episode 11, actually, of season 1 of the vlog and podcast. And, again, I'm just grateful to have you on this journey with me. And I pray that we continue to grow and go together. The purpose of this is to empower and encourage someone. And so if you are empowered and encouraged just a little bit, if this gives you the strength to know and understand you are not alone and that you can move forward, to God be the glory. So there are some, other things that I actually wanted to talk to you about. I've been, and make no mistake, I am doing this work with you. So as I discover something new about me and I get to the bottom of it and do my research on how to, transition through it, I am sharing it with you. I'm not just sitting behind this camera advising you on anything that I'm not going through, have gone through, or maybe currently going through, because I am human and this is a journey. And, it can be a lifelong journey depending on how deeply rooted your traumas are. So, I do a lot of research. I do consult with professionals because sometimes you need that, and you have to be careful when you're going into the recesses of your mind, because depending on how deeply rooted your traumas are, you may need professional support. So when you are challenging yourself in that way, make sure that you are doing it safely. Make sure that you are surrounded by a strong and sturdy support system, because you will need that. And that you are tapping into those professional resources. As I generate a list, I will begin to share that on my webpage. As to what resources I use and reference in my reference sources, because I want you to definitely know that there are plenty of resources out there for you. So today, we talked about narcissism. And we talked about extreme empathy and empaths. And the reason why this is important is because people, physical abuse is abuse. But it's more prominently spoken about and addressed than emotional abuse. And as a survivor um, of trauma, as a person who has come out on the other side of that, you have to know that until you really get down to the bottom of it and face that thing head on, you won't know all the remnants that remain, the debris that that traumatic experience left with you. And what I learned for myself is there were a lot of toxic characteristics that I developed because of my trauma. And one of those, well, it's not even one, it's many. And those toxic characteristics influence how I created relationships, how I make decisions, how I operate in my daily life. And so, although you believe that you've dealt with the trauma because you have become functional in the trauma, but really you haven't. And there's some things that you need to deal with. And so, because it's a process, I'm just gonna, grab a subject and go and develop it, because you have to develop it. You have to know it. You have to understand it in order to truly heal from it. One of the worst characteristics for me and for a lot of survivors or victors, because I'm nobody's victim, is unhealthy relationships. And so that is the focus of, really the main focus of season 1. And, part of that making you a priority is because of those unhealthy relationships and attachments. You often put yourself at the bottom of the list. And so, in addressing that, you'll get a better understanding of why you make the choices that you make, and why those decisions that you shouldn't make, but you make them anyway, and then you have to deal with the consequences, why that comes about. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about projection. Now, projection is a defense mechanism in which the ego defends itself. It's defined as a defense mechanism in which the ego defends itself against unconscious impulses or qualities by denying their existence in themselves or by attributing them to others. Now, I don't know about you, but I know quite a few people and have encountered and probably attached myself. Sorry, I'm moving my other laptop for my morning notes. And have attached myself to individuals who operate in this manner. And part of the draw to people who operate in this manner is control. And again, they've probably suffered their own traumas that they've not healed from. And for them, it became not only a defense mechanism, but a way to control their narrative and their environment, and get their way when they felt like they couldn't. Sometimes these traits can develop in childhood. And so, again, they develop these habits as it's a survival. And not to defend the behavior, but you want to understand the person. You don't just want, even perpetrators, now stay with me here, because I am a woman of God, and forgiveness is a heavy, heavy, heavy part of my walk. For me, in order to forgive, I have to understand. And so, I have walked in unforgiveness before, and it's a heavy weight that you do not want to carry. And in forgiving don't mean you have to forget, but you do need to forgive, and that includes yourself. And so I wanted to understand. And plus, I'm just a curious person. So I wanted to understand the mindset of a narcissist, um, of, a sociopath, of, manipulative personalities, and, the mindset of an abuser. Like, what makes you tick? And so for me, I had to know. Because, I can't forgive you until I understand. You got to give me a reason to forgive you, other than, God compelling me to forgive, because he compels us to forgive. But I still want to understand in my humanness. And so in doing so, I found that a lot of times, not all, some people are just born wrong. Not wrong, but they're born, and they choose the wrong in them is so strong that they just go with it, unfortunately. um, and they have no one around them to really pull them back, and they just end up making poor choices. But I don't think anybody wakes up one day and wants to be wrong. I think it's a lack of support, maybe a lack of love. Something is missing. A key component is missing in their lives, and unfortunately, no one covered them. And so again, it becomes an act of survival. And we as victors have our own characteristics that we've developed in order to survive. What I also want you to know and understand is that it's intentional. They know, especially emotional abusers, they are highly, 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 highly aware of their actions and what they're doing. And so one of the tools that they use is projection. And I'll give you the definition again. It's a defense mechanism in which the ego defends itself against unconscious impulses or qualities by denying their existence in themselves. Catch that. And by attributing them to others. So because they don't want to be honest with themselves, or just the narcissism in them doesn't allow them to take any responsibility, it is easier for them to project that on others. And so, as we discussed in the video on narcissism, victims of trauma who have those characteristics, those traits of wanting to belong, just needing to be needed, wanting to be of service, wanting to be of help, they tend to, myself included, attach themselves to these types of people because they provide some measure of validation. And because they provide that measure of validation and give us, the impression, the feeling that we are not broken, and, you are capable, and they champion you on half-heartedly, there is always their own needs, wants, agenda underlying. People like this tend to see people like us a mile away, and they choose us. And they choose us for that reason, because they need to be, people like that need to be surrounded by people they feel like they're above, they can manipulate, they can control, people that don't challenge them socially or intellectually, because they need to feel validated in themselves, but they go about it a different way. And so that is very dangerous for people like us, because we're already damaged. We already suffer, some sort of self-consciousness, and so we have self-esteem issues. And so they prey on that. And the cycle of abuse is, I will criticize you, demean you, belittle you, and then I will give you some sort of praise or encouragement, but it will only be at my discretion. And it becomes a control mechanism. And that is how they control you and keep you around, basically, because they don't know if they want to be the villain or the savior. And they just kind of go back and forth with that. And so emotional abuse is definitely something that trauma victims put themselves in the line of fire when our traumas are not addressed, because we don't really have a positive self-image often. We don't often have high self-esteem, and that need to be validated. And they take advantage of that, unfortunately. And so if you don't understand what gaslighting is, if you don't understand what narcissism is, if you don't understand those personality disorders, then of course you won't know what to look for. And so my goal again here is to show you and point out those things that I've learned. And honestly, I've had several relationships that I now recognize were unhealthy. And we're going to talk about healthy relationships and what that looks like, but not today. So, with projection, you have to, one of the key things to recognizing projection is knowing yourself. So again, that healing is important, because once you start to heal and you know and understand you won't require the validation of other people. And so it'll be easier for you to recognize when you're being gaslit, when you're being manipulated. And when you start to recognize those things, you'll also start to recognize that you are being emotionally abused. And people who operate in emotional abuse, they just pray for them. That's all I can say. Pray for them, because that there's clearly something going on the inside of them. And the one of the other reasons it's harder for us to recognize that sometimes victims also have cognitive dissonance. I'm sorry. And the definition of that is the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude changes. And so that plays into how victims with low self-esteem and that don't value themselves, how they end up in some of these unhealthy relationships. Oh, I gotta deliver. Y'all like Amazon. So they've delivered something. They rarely ever knock on the door, but they did. So anyway, so cognitive dissonance, it can make people feel uneasy and uncomfortable, particularly if the disparity between their beliefs and behaviors involves something that is central to their sense of self. So behaving in ways that are not aligned with your personal values may result in intense feelings or discomfort. Emotionally abusive people tend to try to keep you out of your comfort zone. Okay, so when you start to grow and evolve and you are attached yourself to an emotionally abusive person, as you become stronger in your own beliefs and your own values, they will do everything they can to basically demean them or convince you that your thought process is wrong or out of line, or not in right alignment, because they really don't want you to become an independent thinker. They rely on that codependency. And so you becoming an independent thinker challenges their authority and control and hold over you. So they will always find a way to either redirect your thoughts or, again, convince you that your thought process is wrong, because they don't want you to have that. They require that codependency for their own mind. And again, it's a sickness. It's an unchecked trauma that they've allowed to fester, and they've developed this defense mechanism and this characteristic. So, here are some healthy ways to deal with the person that you feel is operating in an emotionally abusive place. Um, you know, one of their best, one of their other, best traits is manipulation and trying to convince you that your stance on something is just wrong. Um, even and yes, they are not above lying. They're not above twisting the truth. The really good ones, they try not to lie because they don't want it to be a lie, but they will misconstrue and twist it. Or omission, or just complete silence. Just so that they position it, like if somebody omits some information, it's not technically a lie, but it is. And so they use that tactic a lot as well. And so when you get pushed into a position like this, you have to state your truth and stand by it. If you know in your heart that where you're coming from a genuine, authentic place, and you know that you have truly done nothing wrong, state your truth and stick to it. Giving into their basically temper tantrum, because that's what it will become, is literally just fueling their power and control over you. You can't submit to everything that everyone says or speaks about you. You don't have to. You don't have to receive it, especially if you know it's wrong. So, if you find yourself in a situation where, either having a disagreement or just anything, and their first line of defense is to tell you that you're wrong, your thought process is wrong, or convince you that, the way you're seeing it is wrong, but trust your gut, trust yourself, and state your truth and stick to it. And set boundaries. Okay, so now this is where we are. Now you have to set healthy boundaries. Setting healthy boundaries with anybody in any relationship, even aside from this, is self-care. We have to come out of a place of allowing any and everything to go on and be done to us, and we just lay down like doormats and take it because we want to belong. No, not in this season. That's over. So state your truth, own it, walk in it, and set your boundaries. If a person can't respect your boundaries, then that alone is a red flag for me, because everybody has healthy boundaries. If you cross theirs, I bet you know about it. So why are you not entitled to the same thing? Listen, you're doing this. I don't like it. It doesn't feel good. It hurts my feelings. And that's a healthy boundary. So please don't do this. And if a person continues to do a thing, that's a red flag. If they try to convince you that even though you're telling them this hurts me, this bothers me, I don't like it, and they try to convince you that it's your fault you don't like it because you don't understand it or because you don't want to. No, ma'am. If something hurts me and I don't like it, if you truly care about me, you'll stop doing that thing. Plain and simple. There's a difference between courageous conversations and cowardly conversations. A courageous conversation is meant to empower you, correct and empower. A cowardly conversation to me is just simply meant to demean and break you. And so you have to know the difference. If somebody comes to you and they want to have a courageous conversation, and at the end of that correction you feel empowered, then that is a healthy, courageous conversation. If at the end of that conversation you feel worse about yourself than you did when you walked in, and you're questioning your identity, where your value, that ain't right. That ain't right. That's a projection, and you need to pay attention to the red flags and reevaluate that. And know your audience. You have to know who you're surrounding yourself with. You have to know the people that you interact with and really, really know them. Stop overlooking those little things, because those little things could very well fester into, big things. A lot of times we know when something is truly not right for us. We know when a person is not being fair or genuine or authentic with us. We know that. But because of that drive to, again, want to belong, want to attach ourselves to something, and undervaluing ourselves, we just accept it and overlook it just because, well, this satisfies this portion of my life, so I'm willing to take this little thing. It's just a little flaw. It'll pass. I can deal with it. But why should you have to? Why should you have to? Respect, my grandmother used to say, respect is due to a dog. So if it gets to that place, that's not a little thing, that's a big thing, because over time it will start to wear you down and erode what little bit of self-value and self-esteem you actually have. Nobody's perfect. And when people are constantly coming for your character, and telling you need to change, but when you give it back to them and say, well, friend, I don't like this either, or husband, I don't like this either, and their first line of defense is to just come for you, or I don't receive that, I don't believe that, but you're supposed to take everything they say. They're great at pointing out your wrongs, but dare you point out theirs, and then you're being a bad person? That's a red flag. Trust your gut. God always gives you a warning sign. He always does. We don't always acknowledge them. And understand this: what a person says about you has nothing to do with you. That's their opinion. No, you better than anybody. Now, that's not to say if there's some validity and truth to what they're saying, then you correct that behavior, but you will know. If there's not, God is always going to tell you first. If you do something wrong and you know it's wrong, he's going to correct you first. He's going to convict that heart almost immediately, like, you was wrong. Whether you acknowledge it or not and choose to correct it is on you. But God will always tell you first. And if he ain't told you that, then 9 times out of 10, it's a projection. Take it to him in prayer. If you have questions, you take it to him in prayer. Do not put stock and value into the words of man or of any person. Go reevaluate and seek that information for yourself from the ultimate judge. Hurt people. So, I love my grandmothers. You'll hear me quote them a lot because they had some really, hilarious sayings. And we thought they were funny as children, but as an adult, they really, they really rang true, and I now understand. But my grandmother used to also say, a hurt dog will holler. Hurt people. So if a person is hurting and they're projecting their hurt onto you, when you call them out on that, they gonna holler. That's it. The shoe fits where it. People don't like it. Something about that truth agitates that demon in them, that spirit, that negative spirit in them, and it's going to make them real uncomfortable. So one or two things are going to happen. If they are genuinely a person who wants to do better and be better, they'll do what they can to change that behavior. If they're not, and they're not ready to recognize that negative behavior, just prepare yourself for hell in the high water, because here comes the smear campaign. They will attack you on every level, and you have to be strong enough to withstand that and know and understand. God said the weapons will form. He didn't say they wouldn't prosper. He said they would form. He said they wouldn't prosper. So be prepared for the arrows and the darts. Listen, they talked about Jesus Christ. They're going to talk about you. But until you get to a healthy place, those words can be damning. So that's why it's important for us to get to a healthy place. So, and master your emotions. See, this is my issue. I have this issue. And I'm being honest. I am a reactor. If you say something to me that I don't like, that hurts my feelings, that's not often a good thing. And so I'm learning, and in this season, to be less reactive and more proactive, because not only do I fuel the bad behavior, I also give them permission to continue to torment me, because now they know if they hit that one spot, I'm going to react. And a person with these abusive tendencies, an emotionally abusive person will now take that and try to spin it to prove their point to everybody else that you're this horribly bad person. And so you have to master your emotions, learn when to say when, and just breathe and regulate yourself, and be okay with having to say, I have to step away. Know when to disengage, because they love to bait you and pull you in. And again, they bait you, they pull you in, you flip out, lose control, and they then use that against you, and you've given them control. Nobody should have that much control over your emotions. Detach, and then, listen, once you figure out and you come to a place of accepting and knowing that, this was an unhealthy relationship, don't beat yourself up about it. It happens. But just know when to detach and be okay with letting go. What's that saying? If you let something go, if it really truly belongs to you and you let it go, it'll come back to you. Well, take that stance. Let it go. And I don't care how much it hurts. Grieve it and let it go, because it means you know if it's doing you more harm than good, if it's not adding value but devaluing your life, let it go. You have to. Self-love is so important. You have to love you more than anybody else. And how you love you will dictate how people treat you. And once you get to a place of self-love, you'll be able to recognize all the signs of emotionally abusive people. Some of us work for emotionally abusive people. They come over to your desk or wherever you are, and because they just suck, or they having a bad day, they, demean you, they attack your character just to make themselves feel good. And then 30 minutes later, when they need you to work that overtime, or somebody ain't going to show up, then they want to be your friend. Well, I didn't mean it. And you get that half-hearted apology. I'm just having a rough day, but you're really a good worker, and I would appreciate it if you could do XYZ for me. Yeah, no, it's a no from me. Because that's also emotional abuse. And again, unchecked trauma puts us in the line of fire of those people. Emotional abuse is not limited to just relationships. You can find emotional abuse even if it's just an instance of it in a majority of our social interactions. You can't imagine how many people are walking around here broken and raggedy, tattered and torn. Some want to acknowledge it, some don't. Some are okay operating in that brokenness. That brokenness has made some of them just mean-spirited people. We pray for them and we move on. But, again, projection is a thing. Agree to disagree. You don't need them to agree with you to feel better. I used to be one of those people. No, I need you to get my point. I need it to be told that I don't call me a liar when I'm telling the truth. That will make me flip out. When I know I'm telling the truth and you continuously call me a liar, that was such a huge trigger from a child. Because, when I would tell adults about the things that happened to me, they would dismiss me. And so being called a liar when I know full well I'm telling the truth will send me, you get the tears. I get very angry. It's a trigger for me. And when I learned that, it was like a PTSD thing. I've gotten better at it. So now I don't care. I used to need that. Like, no, I need to clear my name. I need to fix this. I don't care no more. I'm going to agree to disagree. I don't need you to believe me. I don't need you to agree with me to feel better. I feel better because I stayed true to myself and I stood my ground. That's what makes me feel better now, today, in this season, because I'm getting healthier and I'm relying more on me and the validation I give myself than I do on other people. But again, it comes with the journey of healing. And so because I'm working every day to get better, I notice these things a lot more. So, be mindful of that. So we want you to, let's go through the list real quick. Pay attention, know your surroundings. Hold true to you. Set your boundaries. Know your audience. Know that other people's opinions do not define you. Okay? Know and understand where your wounds are. Like I said, for me, one of those things was being called a liar when I know I'm telling the truth. But because I know and understand that, I now know when to disengage. I've also learned when to detach. I've learned and am still learning the greatness that lives in me, my purpose, and I love me more and more every day. This journey has helped me fall in love with me more and more and more every day. And be okay with everybody not believing you. Be okay with everybody not needing to know your story or your side of things. Just be okay with that. And remember that hurt people hurt people. Now, that's not saying give them a pass, but when somebody attacks you, just keep that in the recesses of your mind that person is probably hurt too. And although that's not your responsibility or your problem, it will definitely help you understand why they're doing what they're doing a little bit more. So I hope you got a little bit out of this. I hope it made sense to you. Sorry for the FedEx interruption, but I do order a lot. I love Amazon. It's terrible. I have to leave them a basket of snacks on the porch because I order a lot. Hey, listen, it's COVID, it's quarantine. I had nothing better to do. And my other business is I'm still ordering stuff. But you have a wonderful and blessed day. And remember that the sun rises alone every day and still manages to shine. The moon rises alone every night and still manages to light someone's way. Use your light. You are worth it. You are capable. I love you. God loves you. You better love you. And I will catch you next time.